So this is my daughter, Sadie. I know, all parents are biased towards their children and don't really want to hear about this, but I promise, mine is objectively brilliant. Because by the age of only 8, she's got a very impressive resume. She's been a teacher, a scientist, an artist, a sandcastle designer, both the architect and the construction worker, a farmer, a deep-sea explorer, a soccer star, a musician, a baker, a basketball star, a world traveler, a zoologist, a pirate, and a dinosaur. This picture is proof positive of how seriously she takes this. Because you can see she's got 2 little horns up, but a very concerned look on her face, because this is her job. She wants to get this right. But this is the day she decided to be a triceratops, and a triceratops doesn't have 2 horns. Triceratops has 3. I look at this little triceratops, and it makes me think about when Carl Sagan famously pointed out that we are all made of stars, that we are actually made of the oxygen and carbon that was forged in the belly of stars 4.5 billion years ago. Sagan goes on to point out that this makes us a way in which the universe can know itself, which is very poetic. And I look at my daughter, and that makes sense. I feel like the universe is writing poetry with these minute little star pieces, trying to find a way to know itself better and say something meaningful. It's the reason that I feel like maybe we're collectively the poem, and the reason that I know that each of you has probably felt at some point like something made a little too much sense on a cosmic level. Like when we fall in love, when we really and truly honestly fall in love. That's why it feels like discovering we're part of a constellation, because we discover we're part of a story that we never knew that we always knew. Now, Sadie is the embodiment of this cosmic possibility. We all start out like she does, with this infinite idea of what we could be, all of these things that we could be, all of our potential, all of the ways in which we could interact with each other, and some of our limitations are learned. I mean, no 8-year-old ever says, I really want to grow up to be a rock star, but I understand the limitations of the record industry, and I'm willing to admit that statistically speaking, it is improbable. No, they don't say things like that because they're too busy saying things like, when I grow up, I'm going to be Katy Perry, which is physically impossible, of course, because there's only one Katy Perry. But it's really nice to have that dream. See, all of Sadie's really nice dreams were supported, not indulged, because that implies there was no faith that she could actually do these things, but actually physically supported. If she wanted to be an artist, I found classes and I painted with her. If she wanted to be a soccer star, I found teams and I worked out with her. If she wanted to be a dinosaur, I will admit that one was difficult, but the support was still there. Nobody ever told her she could be a poet or a scientist, but never both. There's this really great book called The Artist's Way. And the best part about this book is it's challenging us to reclaim our creative selves, is this question. It's a very simple question. What would you do? What would you do if you had never learned about limitations, if you could go back and talk to your inner child and ask, what did we always want to be before we discovered we couldn't really be anything? So I want you to indulge me in this question for a second. I want you to plug into your inner child and ask, listen up, little buddy. What did we want to be before we were told we didn't really have the capacity to be all those things? Don't worry about skill set or training or reality. Don't worry about any of it. Just go back to whatever your dream was. You got that little dream job on the tip of your brain? Good. Well, statistically speaking, you're not that thing. Sorry. And my daughter will probably not be any of the things that she dreams about being either. And you're going to want to be sad about that. You're going to want to picture my adorable daughter in a cubicle somewhere, slowly dying inside, thinking of the days where she wanted to be a Dr. Dinosaur princess. You might even remember your lost dreams along the way, where you wanted to be a fighter pilot or a fireman. Maybe you wanted to be a concert piano player until you were 10 years old and your piano teacher told you to quit and take up football because you were built like a fridge and you had hot dog fingers. No, that was That was just me that happened to. Not a universal experience. It's fair. There's no sadness in this, though, because it's part of being human. Human beings are social animals, and being a social animal comes with some scientific rules, which is great. We have very high-level characteristics of social society development. We do things like collaborative brood care, which means we take care of our little ones together in some ways. We have shared generational space, which means the old and the young can exist in the same spot, and that's fine. And most importantly for what I want to talk about today, we have a division of labor based on perceived skill set. Now, we have become fantastic at this. We're very, very good at vetting ourselves against other people. We've actually become too good at this. We're the only species that has ever taught itself doubt in the face of comparison by one another. So we look at other people and we start to use these horrendous words like less, right? We see other people and we say, well, I'm less beautiful, I'm less talented, I'm less strong, I'm less valuable. And the problem with this is we start to shave off all of these great little pieces of ourselves. We start to get rid of these pieces of ourselves that could make us great for the sake of fitting more easily into the structure of the things around us. But we lose parts of ourselves that could be amazing when we do this. Take me, for example. I've always had these two sides of myself that I felt were a little at war, that I had to keep them a little bit Jekyll and Hyde from one another. By day, I was a man of utter science. I wanted to know all of the machinations of the universe, all of the details of how things worked. I wanted to be very detailed in figuring out how things grew and why. And by night, I was a slam poet. Now, for those of you who don't know, before you start conjuring up ideas of Pablo Neruda in a luchador mask, putting some wrestling moves on Emily Dickinson, and by the way, for the record, I'll put money on Dickinson all day in that fight. All day. It's not really like this. I'm going to tell you a little bit about slam poetry and what it is. Now, slam poetry is competitive performance poetry. I know, thanks for the woo. So, I appreciate that. It's a little half-hearted, but I'll take it. Competitive performance poetry that we do is sort of like poems meets figure skating, right? So when figure skating happens, yes, you want to be technically proficient in both. You want to have the judges be impressed, and there are judges, and just like in figure skating, the judges sometimes end up getting booed. But the idea of it is that it goes beyond just being technically proficient. You want to connect with your audience. You want to make sure that they understand what they're supposed to feel. You want the experience to wrap around them so that you have them with you. Would you like to hear a little bit of slam poetry? That was a bigger woo. I'm glad you clapped before I even did anything. Thank you. But the clapping is an important piece as well. Let's talk cultural stuff for a second before we even get into slam poetry. Slam poetry is not really down with clapping. It's not really something we do. We save that for the circus, right? So I'm going to do a little piece of spoken word for you, which is the fancy way of saying slam poetry. So I'm going to do a little piece for you, and you're not going to clap for me even though you're going to want to. You're going to snap your fingers, because that's poetry cool. So if you hear anything that you like while I'm doing this piece, you're going to snap your fingers. And at the end of it, you're going to show me that you enjoyed what I did by snapping your fingers as well. Even if you didn't, you probably should, because that's polite, and I'm very nervous. Ready? In chrysalis, the risk is immense, but this is how community becomes butterfly strong. You cannot be broken shell born into the potential of soft winged flight of new heights without first counting the caterpillar feet that have kept you connected to the tangle of old branch ideas that bear leaves you know the taste of. Community is butterfly struggle, but there is choice in the breakdown of you, in sensing the season of your selfish silkworm movements turning slow. You will know. The call of winds that smell like budding possibilities and trees that can only be reached if you metamorphosize your makeup and take up the challenge to become new species for the sake of something far bigger than self. Community is cocoon. It is enveloping and heavy, and you will wear it as the chemistry of connections lessens the bonds of your solitary segments, enzymes in times of transition that will allow you to break your body down to the core of you, allow you to ready yourself for things you could never have been alone. you are home. In the wrap walls of belief built together, the pheromones of butterflies that came before you, listening for their cells to spell out your antenna because they know that community communicates, community disagrees, community is frustrating, community is exhausted in expectation, the give and take of who we've always been, broken upon by waves of who we need to be. Community is evolution. Community is an almost constant state of chrysalis, and yes, the risk is immense, but so is the reward. It is butterflies that taste through their feet because anything's as sweet as the struggle nectar of forward movement, as the paper-thin wings thick with possibility, because community is butterfly strong. Thank you. Much appreciated. It's a lot of snapping. You did good. I was concerned that one person would clap and then I would have to make them feel bad in a room full of other people. So I'm glad you stayed on point. You'll notice in that piece, it was you. You'll notice in that piece that the two sides of me are trying to find space to exist on the same page. The science and poetry aspects of myself are there. We've got those beautiful science words of how butterflies actually are and all these beautiful little science terms, and then all these wonderful words wrapped around them to let you know how I feel about what we're doing. In fact, even the slide that's behind me, right up there, this is a butterfly wing scale magnified 5,300 times, which is very sciencey, but I could write poems about this all day. See, I never really loved either side of myself until I figured out that science and poetry are synonymous. Science and poetry are only ever trying to do the same thing. They're only both trying to figure out how we fit, how we make sense together in this structure that we've built. See, science and poetry are doing the same job, and that job is figuring out how me fits with you. So human beings have really survived on the strength of two things, and that's our social structure, which we've talked about, and our ability to adapt. Now, our adaptation is not like other animals. We don't have teeth and claws in the same way. No, our adaptation is adaptation. It's the ability to be in any scenario and think our way out. But to have that happen, the reason why human beings are in all of the different places of the planet where we chose to stay is because we pushed aside our limitations and made the decision that nothing was going to stop us. We had to be both artist and analyst to make that happen, because anything that came at us, we had to be creative enough to think of our way out and then analytical enough to put those things into practice. So what I'm saying is we need to stop defining ourselves with limiting terms. We need to stop saying the word less at all. We need to stop saying, I'm less good at painting than that other person, so I'm just not going to pick up a brush anymore. I'm less strong at math, so I'm just not going to train myself to be better. We need to stop believing in things that are less about us and start believing that all of the pieces of what make us complex are the reason that we are going to be able to do great things. All of the pieces that fit together in such weird ways are the reason that we are going to be able to adapt. We need to believe that we can do anything. We need to believe in as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast every morning. See, Sadie is lucky, because she gets the benefit of both science and poetry that are cumulative. She gets the benefit of all of our learning from our mistakes. So my job from here, as my daughter is becoming just old enough to start defining herself by the things she feels she is less than by comparison to her friends, is to remind her that less is not a word in her vocabulary, that all of the pieces of her matter, that every piece of her is a tool and a weapon that make her capable of saying that she can be and do anything. She, like us, need to know that we need to be a little bit poet and a little bit scientist every day. That every scenario we are in is going to require a little bit of that poetry and a little bit of that science, because when we recognize that there is poet and scientist in us all, and that's the only way that we adapt. That's the only way that we move forward together. That's the only way that we, as things that are made of stars, can become things that the universe is truly proud to know in itself. Thank you.